Taxi drivers of Reddit, have anyone actually jumped into your taxi and screamed, "Follow that car"? If yes, what happened? I was in New Orleans once and a cab I was in got sideswiped by a drunk driver. The drunk driver then took off. I told the cab to follow him, which he did. We ended up in a parking lot and we watched them go into an apartment building. Cabbie had the station call the cops. I wrote a statement for the cabbie and he called me a new cab while he wanted for the cops. I drove a taxi one summer in a party resort. One night, two guys jumped in and yelled, "Follow that car," which was another taxi that I knew the driver of and I obliged. Turns out, one of their mates was drunk as fuck and decided to just go to their hotel without telling them. They only saw the guy leaving the club drunk and they thought he was going to a strip club without them. He was actually going to their hotel, as he was hammered. Another time three girls jumped in the car and said follow that car. The car in question was a black sedan, tinted back windows. Yet wasn't that shady in my humble opinion. We follow the car for 15 minutes, leaving the resort going into a forest. The girls start freaking out, as one of their friends, also a girl, was seen stepping into that car. Yeah, turns out, that she just hooked up with some guy in the club they were earlier and she was about to suck his D when we pulled up next to them. Weirdest summer. I did that once as a passenger. We said it as a joke. We were in a group of 6 and couldn't fit in a single cab. So I went into the second cab and said, "Follow that cab." We expected the driver to laugh it off and ask for our destination. Instead, he just took off and followed the first cab. I followed the car. It stopped in a suburban house. Dude went into the house. They were his family and didn't have room for him with them. A friend of mine is a taxi driver and this has happened to him. An elderly man rushed inside his taxi and pointed out loud to follow a red Toyota. This man never explains why to follow, just tries to frantically call to somewhere. My friend asked multiple times if they need to call police, but the man just waved no and pointed to follow the car. They circle around the town, finally ending up to a front of a house where the car followed parks. As the car stop, man says, "Hold on a moment, I'll pay," and jumps out of the car. An elderly lady steps out of the red Toyota and the man, apparently, her husband, starts to scream, "Why did you left me at the mall?" Woman is waving her hands screaming back, "What are you screaming about, you are here," and walks inside the house like nothing has happened. Man returns and pays the drive, being sorry about it all at the same time. My friend thought they were following a burglar or something, but it turned out the lady just forgot her husband at the mall. Funny situation in a way, but sad in a way too, as my friend said, dementia. This sort of happened to me about 20 years ago. Not a taxi driver, although I was driving down a main road and saw a dude running around with a baseball bat and then cop cars parked on a side street. Young me decided that I want to get involved, so I pulled down the side street and found a cop on foot a good distance away from his car. I told him about baseball bat guy and he gets on his radio. Guess he got an immediate update on his radio, looks at how far he is from his car and he says, "Can you drive me down the road?" I'm thinking fuck yeah, and tell him to jump in. He does, and I am seriously driving around back roads with a cop riding shotgun giving me directions while on his radio. Only lasted for about 2 minutes and then he jumps out to pursue the guy on foot. Not a very satisfying ending to the story, since I never found out what happened. But damn it, that's my story. I'm actually a taxi driver, bike taxi pedicab. I was hanging out a corner when a coworker of mine got a ride across the intersection. Suddenly a guy walks up to me and tells me to follow that cab, but keep a distance. This guy looked current or ex-military, demeanor, haircut, attitude, has one of those earbuds like the agents from The Matrix. Exuded the vibe of being very professional, competent and not giving a fuck at the same time. So I was born for this moment. I read all the Tom Clancy books as a kid, all the books about spycraft during World War II and the Cold War, every spy movie ever made, etc. I kept about 100 yards distance and then would accelerate when they went around a curve anytime they were near a light or intersection. I have all the lights memorized, to ensure we would make the same light but a little later than they did. At one point a car pulls up alongside and another guy switches places with the original guy and we keep going. After about 12 blocks the pedicab pulls over ahead of us and the guy tells me to pull over. Hands me $20 for a $12 ride, although I would have done it for free just to live my 9-year-old fantasy. Probably just local cops, but I can dream. Ooh, I'm not a taxi driver, but I was the passenger for a story that is similarly cliched. Back when I was an actor, active drug addict, alcoholic, what's the difference? I know, I had a director threaten to recast me a week before the show if I was late to rehearsal again. To put that into perspective, recasting a major role after rehearsals have started is generally unheard of, and almost unthinkable so late in the rehearsal process. She was really fed up with me. On this particular day, I was running late as usual and had 5 minutes to get to rehearsal. It was a 10-minute walk or a 5-minute drive. I flagged a cab, hopped in, and said, "I need you to take me to this address and, if you can, I need you to step on it." The driver smiled wide and said, "I've always wanted to hear that." Cue him putting the pedal to the metal. Within 10 seconds we were approaching 65 miles per hour on a 30 miles per hour city street, weaving through traffic, clipping yellow lights too close for comfort, and generally whipping this cab around in an extraordinarily haphazard and irresponsible fashion. I was stunned, wide-eyed, in absolute shock and terror, unable to process that he quite literally heeded my request or that this was actually happening. I thought I was going to die. It was the best cab ride of my life. I was 2 minutes early to rehearsal. Not entirely related, but I once had somebody jump into my car and I wasn't even a taxi. I was driving down the street in Boston and was stopped at a red light, minding my own business. Suddenly, my passenger door flung open and someone climbed in. Completely shocked, I didn't even have time to react. For some reason, it never entered my mind that I should be alarmed or concerned about this trespasser, so when I saw that it was an elderly lady I just remained calm. Without skipping a beat, she said in a thick Russian accent, "You take me home, please." So, I started driving. I asked where she lived but she just said, "Keep going, I tell you when to stop." At that point, it dawned on me that she probably had dementia and that she likely thought I was someone she knew. Or maybe even a taxi. Nope. After a few minutes of conversation, it was abundantly clear that this woman had simply picked the first car she saw, gotten in, and requested a ride. During the 10-minute car ride, she asked about my life. I was in college studying psychology at the time, and when I told her this she said, "You make good psychologist, very nice boy." It put a big smile on my face. My grandparents had all died either before I was born or during early childhood, so I don't think I had ever had an elderly person say something like that to me. It felt nice. Finally, we reached an apartment building and she told me to pull over. When I put the car in park she turned to me and said, "Thank you driving me today." I assured her it was no problem at all and wished her the best, and her parting words to me as she climbed out were, "Very good boy. Good luck with studies." After pausing for a moment, I drove away and just kind of let it be. It was such a nonchalant and comfortable interaction that I resisted my temptation to immediately text friends to tell them what had happened. It felt like that would have cheapened it, or turned it into a novelty. It was just so natural and I went with it. She's unlikely to be alive at this point, but I hope she enjoyed the rest of her days. Godspeed, Russian grandma I had for a day. Not a taxi driver, but one time after a work party a bunch of coworkers and I were going to a different bar and we needed to take cabs. A few of us got into one and the rest in another. One of my coworkers told our cabbie, "Hey, if you can beat that other cab, I'll give you an extra $20. The cabbie smiled in the rear view and said, "Okay, buddy." He started weaving between cars until he got in front of the other cab. Then he perfectly timed it so he could get the other cab stuck at a red light while he just made it past. With that head start, he had no need to really rush and he calmly got us to the bar first. I think he actually really enjoyed it and got a pretty nice tip for a short trip. Not a cab driver, but once at port in Spain on deployment we were late and getting back to ship, so we jumped in a cab and said there's a good tip your way if you get us there before 10:30. We were there by 10:15 and it was the scariest car ride of my life. It was amazing. Oh god, I have a really bad story for this. I used to drive a taxi for my uncle's company. A guy gets in my taxi, says, "Just follow that car," and reassures me it's nothing serious. Except when the other car stops, he gets out and runs to the car we were following and drags the guy out and starts hitting him in the face, hard. I got out and was yelling at him and calling him an asshole for lying to me, and he got all in my face and threatened to beat the shit out of me too, said a bunch of racist slurs at me, then ran off. The guy who got punched had his nose broken. The weirdest part is that he had no idea who that guy was. Wasn't a taxi and this kinda flips it around, but my partner and I had some guy take off on us on foot and we were chasing him down a semi-major road, but he was smoking us. Some random person in a minivan pulled over, yelled "jump in," and then dropped us off just in front of him. The guy was totally gassed by that point and just proned himself out on the ground when we jumped out. Seriously, was like something in movie.